Jaya Radha. Ishkan Govinda ki, Shiva Prabhupada ki, Srimad Bhagavatam ki. Doesn't seem to be coming out this mic. So reading from Our Family Business. Interesting title. Does anybody know, was it Prabhupada that called it Our Family Business? It sounds like it would be from the language. By 1971 in America, ISKCON's finances began to stabilize, but its economic engine really got into gear during the Christmas marathon of 72 and 73, when devotees discovered how to distribute the more expensive hardbound books. In December 1972, the devotees saw for themselves the incredible power of Srila Prabhupada's transcendental thought. On December 22, 1972, devotees in Los Angeles stunned has now become the celebrated Prabhupada Marathon. Noting the huge crowds of shoppers and people's more charitable disposition during the Christmas season, each devotee on the Los Angeles Sanctum Party stayed out much later than usual to try to distribute more books that day. Most were working alone or in pairs and didn't realise that the same enthusiasm had spread throughout each member of the party. Midnight approached, each returned to the temple thinking he or she was surely the last to come home. Each was surprised to find that every toy had spread slightly. The devotees began to gather in the sanctum room, their usual meeting place after a day out. They were amazed to discover that others had only just arrived, and especially that some were still in the state of distributing books at such a late hour. When the scores were tallied at the end of the day, it became obvious to them that they could distribute unprecedented numbers of books in the days leading up to Christmas. They vowed to stay out all day and most of the night throughout Christmas Eve. That year, the Los Angeles Book Distribution Party distributed a record-breaking 18,000 pieces of literature in just 3 days. If anybody's familiar with the Baras, I'm familiar with the Baras. In Glasgow is a market. It's not so prominent as the place in the East End. It's called Barrowland. And the Baras is commonly known to people. Generally considered a low class area. Everybody stealthily goes and does the shopping at the Baras at some time or another. And we used to go there because we open till midnight, so on Christmas Eve we used to go there till midnight doing book distribution. It's really interesting. Don't know if it'll be happening this year. So Prabhupada's transmitted book distribution key. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 19, entitled The Island of Jambudi, text number 16. Bharati Pyasman Varshe Sarij Chalai Santi Bhavo Malayo Mangala Pasto Mani Anakasti Kuta Vishaba Kakako Sadu Devagiri Vishyamukan Sri Shailo Venkato Mahendro Varitaro Vindya Shutiman Vrikshadari Giri Hariyatro Dona Chitrakito Govardhano Nagataka Katibo Nilagu Gnuka Dracula Kamagiri Ikichanye Chata Sahasrasa Shailastisham Tambakababa Nanda Nadyas Chasam Sankhya Sankyata and the tract of land known as Varsha, as in Lavika Varsh. There are many mountains and rivers. Some of the mountains are known as Malaya, Mangalaprastha, Mainaka, Trikuta, Rishabha, Kutaka, Olaka, Saha, Saya, Devagiri, Vishyamukha, Srishaila, Venkata, Mahendra, Varidar, Vindhya, Shuktiman, Vikshagiri, Hariyatra, Duranchakita, Govardhan, Raivataka, Kakuva, Nila, Gokamukha, Indrakila, Kamagiri. Besides these, there are many other hills with many large and small rivers flowing from their slopes. Two of the main rivers, Brahmaputra and the shore, called Nadas or main rivers. These are other great rivers that are very common. Dasa, Tantra, Sharkaravarta, Tungabhadra, Krishnavenya, Bhimarati, Godavari, Nirvindya, Ayoshni, Tapi, Reva, Surasa, Narmada, Chamanvati, Mahanivadi, Vidashmati, Nishikulia, Krishama, Koshiki, Mandakini, Yamuna, Saraswati, Vishadvati, Gomati, Sarayu, Rudashvati, Saptavati, Chundruma, Sandu, Chandrabhaga, Mari, Vritha, Tashta, and Sydney, and Vishwa. The inhabitants of Bharatvarsha are purified because they always remember these rivers. Those are good memories. Sometimes they chant the names of these rivers as mantras, and sometimes go directly to the rivers to touch them and bathe in them. Thus the inhabitants of Bharatvarsha become purified. All these rivers are transcendental, therefore one can be purified by remembering them, touching them, or bathing in them. This is still going on. Om Jana Tananda Shana Jana Salakaya Chachuma Tamina Tajmashi Kashan Ramanana Tegan Vivatam Vande Shri Jananam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Brahmanitananda Shri Vaitnava Shri Sarigura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare. Prabhupada says all these rivers are transcendental, therefore one can be purified by remembering them, touching them, or bathing in them, touching them, or bathing in them. This practice remembering not one attachment, so the little pot of purify ourselves. Process of purification. We have some fire yajnas, one which set the fire yajna for initiation. Where do we get all this candles? From the Ganges. Yeah. contract with the Ganges if we get Ganges water sent over in little bottles every week. But how are we getting it from the Ganges physically? Yeah, but we haven't been there for years, so where would we get it from? So there's a mantra, Gange Chai, Mani Chai Bhagavatam. Brahmins, they make Ganga Jal by chanting this mantra. So this is mentioned in the verse and purport here, that the inhabitants of Bharat are purified because they always remember these rivers. Sometimes they chant the names of these rivers as mantras. Ganga Chai, Mani Chai Bhagavatam means by chanting these sacred rivers' names, and a certain thing that the Brahmins will do with the Brahmin thread and a certain mudra. Mudra means a hand position. They will touch the water, chant these mantras, and it becomes infused as sacred water. So it's not that we have to have some contract that we have to get a certain amount of Ganges water bottles delivered to our doorstep by the milkman, the Ganges water man. We run around at 4:30 in the morning trying to deliver to the different temples. Now the devotees chant by the mantra. So this is also called Tantra, this type of activity. So we hear Tantra, and Tantra is sometimes seen as being some kind of black magic type thing, or some lusty thing. Like what's that thing we have, the Kama Sutra, where they kind of promote all sorts of different, how to be a more agile, basically. It probably says, that yoga is not meant for gymnastics for better sex life. So sometimes people, if they've got a lower desire, they try to find something in the Vedas which suits them, such as, here's a mantra you can use where it tells you you can use this mantra and you can chant it, and then you can eat meat. But what's the mantra saying? Then you know that mantra. You know the Sanskrit mantra? So basically what you've got to do is, it tells you that you have to, on a full moon night, take an animal to the top of a hill, and you have to look in its eye and you chant this mantra, I'm killing you now, but in the future you will kill me. So that doesn't mean to say it's okay to do it. What it's doing is it's trying to minimize it when people are just killing animals, and then you can't stop them and say, okay, well, let's try to minimize it first of all, and let's try to make these people conscious about what they're doing. They're actually harming themselves. And this is a principle, of course, of when sometimes we think people are harming us, but they're actually harming themselves, as it comes back to them. So the purpose of that mantra is to tell people who will eat meat at all costs that, okay, at least limit it, and then you're looking at the animal's eyes and you say, I'm killing them now, but in the future you will kill me. So people are supposed to think, why am I doing this? If I'm going to kill you and then you're going to kill me, I want to be in this position next time round. So only those who are the most deepest in tamas would carry on such a thing. But what they did is they take that mantra and then they use it to open up slaughterhouses. Therefore Buddha came to teach ahimsa. He said, stop this nonsense, follow the Vedas and just listen to me. And of course he tricked them by getting them to follow the principle of ahimsa, which is a Vedic principle anyway. So first of all, he told them to do that, and because he was such an attractive, charismatic, transcendental personality, then the people in general would follow him. And then the Vedas were reintroduced, but they were covered, it was considered to be covered atheism. They were reintroduced by who? Sankaracharya, who is an incarnation of Shiva. So Shiva is discussing, I think it's in Shiva Prana, he says to Parvati, his consort, that in Kali Yuga I will appear in the guise of a Brahmin to teach covered atheism. I don't remember that verse. So then that was to reintroduce the Vedas. And then the third part of the strategy of the Lord was then Lord Chaitanya would come and teach Chinta Veda, Veda Tattva. So therefore the Vedic becomes was authorized again. So as we were reading in the Nama meeting this morning, that the Yoga Dharma, religion for the age, is actually the chanting of the Maha Mantra. That's the most important thing. And everything which we're doing, our reading, our service, maintaining the body, maintaining the temples, everything which we're doing is actually to serve that purpose of improving our chanting. Our chanting is a personal relationship with Krishna. So if our japa is not too good, that means our relationship with Krishna is improved. This is the most important thing, because at the end of this life, we're really going to be depending on how close are we to Krishna. It's mentioned that even if the devotee forgets Krishna at the time of death, for some reason you may be in some situation where death comes quickly, you don't have time to remember, or your mind is so disturbed you can't remember, but Krishna doesn't forget you. If we develop that relationship with Krishna throughout our whole life, it's not that at the end Krishna says, "Oh, you spaced out the last minute, too bad, you need to come back." Krishna wants us more than we want him. That's why he's been with us all this time. That's a super soul. We were discussing that last night, that the Lord is so kind that he travels with us wherever we go, even if we reject him. Now, who would do that? Do we have ever met such a friend that will go with us anywhere through our highs and lows? So Krishna is our eternal well-wishing friend. We have to always remember that. Sometimes we don't always appreciate it. But the time will come when we'll look back and see that Krishna was always there for us, because we didn't listen a lot of the time. So the chanting of mantras to invoke the 7 sacred rivers into the water, and then it surcharges it with transcendental potency. So someone might say, "Oh, it's just your imagination. It's wishful thinking. It could be like that." Personally speaking, I don't think so, because even materially we see that water is. Has anybody heard of Dr. We actually did some kirtan opening in one of his ceremonies in Glasgow, the trade hall, before he passed away. He was sick, he didn't show up, but one of his persons did. He did some experiments with water. He was starting to do it with food as well, which would have been good because it would have brought about some scientific proof for the principle of prasadam. Anyway, it was quite surprising results that he found. So what he would do is that he'd get some water, and somebody would speak to the water, and they'd use very harsh things like, "You're such a fool, I hate you, bogus," whatever. And then they would freeze the water very quickly, and then under a microscope they examined the cellular structure of it, and it was all distorted. Or they'd play like really Tamaskun heavy metal music or something like that, and then they would freeze it quickly and analyse the molecular structure of it. And then he did the same experiment using very kind, gentle tones. "You're so wonderful, I appreciate you so much, you give me life," and blah 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 like that. And then they looked and seen that the crystal formations were very uniform, very like sacred geometry. And then interestingly they chanted the Shiva Mantra, and then the crystals had like a Trishuli effect. Trishuli means trident. Yeah, Lord Shiva carries a trident. So what I was hoping for was, if we had the chance to meet him, I was like going to ask him to do one with the Maha Mantra, but we didn't get the chance. It was interesting because they had loads of water, bottles of water, and they were giving it out. So before, I knew part of the program was going to be they're going to give the water out to everybody, so I just sat down and offered it all, so everyone at least got prasadam from that. It was interesting because I kind of preempted it, because they were passing the water around, and then they were saying, "Okay, we want everyone to give some blessing to this water," and blah blah blah, and so they can feel the effect of speaking nicely to the water. So it was showing you what little did they know they were already getting water, which was off 50%. But the whole point of that we're making there is that the effect of words and intention on water like that was having an effect, and that's even just materially effect. What to speak of the chanting mantras, we're infusing, so that is how these transcendental sound vibrations of these holy names of rivers. Prabhupada mentioning in the verse in the purport, as people chant these names for purification. They can chant the name of Yamuna Devi, Ganga Devi. But of course, of all mantras, Maha Mantra is the best mantra. It's not okay, let's go and chant these mantras. Sometimes we do it some kirtan program because it gets people on board a little bit, because we're happy to chant Hare Krishna all day long, no problem to us. But sometimes because they've got their conceptions, they're like, oh, why did you just chant Hare Krishna? You've not got another mantra you can chant. So we chant different mantras, so that people are somewhat satisfied in that way, and then when they feel somewhat confident and happy chanting along, we introduce the Maha Mantra. And we've often found that when people start chanting the Maha Mantra, they feel the difference. One time we did 8-hour kirtan in Findhorn up in north of Scotland, and we were chanting various mantras. Randy would have been there. We were chanting various mantras for some time, and then we brought the Maha Mantra in, and it really lifted it. There's one lady in particular that ran, she was tears streaming from her eyes, and I thought maybe something's happened. Maybe somebody said something harsh to her or offended her, and said, "What's up, you alright?" She said, "Yeah, sorry, I'm just started chanting the Maha Mantra and I couldn't stop crying." She went to some, it wasn't even an ISKCON retreat, but she went to some retreat where they talked about the Hare Krishna mantra known as the Maha Mantra. And she said at that time it just went over my head. She says, but now I can see what they mean by it. It's the greatest of all mantras. So she had the great experience, the great fortune of being able to actually be open enough to accept the Maha Mantra and have that reawakening of our lost consciousness connecting to Krishna. So this is what the purpose of the Maha Mantra is. Just as water can be infused with chanting the names of Ganges, Yamuna, Saraswati, Godavari, Narmada, etc., then our consciousness is infused with Krishna when we chant Krishna's name. And this is what we mean by Krishna conscious. We become Krishna conscious simply by chanting Krishna's name. Therefore Krishna says, Satatam Kirtayanto Mam. Krishna's not egotistical by saying, just chant my name all the time. It's not like, I'm so self-centered that everybody's got to chant my name. And it's not that. We're all part and parcel of Krishna, and Krishna is eternally full of bliss and knowledge. And he said, if you just connect with me by chanting my name, then you revive your eternal bliss and knowledge. Krishna he's not trying to control us or subjugate us. He actually just wants us to be happy. He wants us to be satisfied in our eternal constitutional position again. But because we've become envious, we want to enjoy our separate film, and then we create so many different philosophies like atheism and so many other things like that. But these things are not new. There's nothing new about these different philosophies. Sometimes people get right and got a philosophy of following one path, but that's also another path. Everyone just follows their own path. It's called Manarat, following the chariot of the mind. It's interesting, the effect of water, even water itself. Shiva Mantra explains elsewhere in the Bhagavatam that water it reduces fatigue. This is the nature of it, and whatever's added to it expands it as well. So like something's diluted by water, it reduces fatigue, and it refreshes one. Sometimes devotees may do a fast. There's one way you used to cheat if they were doing a dry fast, which means no eating or drinking. But if they're feeling really rough, they could just go and take a shower. It's kind of drinking without drinking. has that nature. It removes fatigue. Sometimes you're traveling a long way, and the first thing you want to do when you get to the place is have a shower, because it relieves your fatigue, it settles your life airs. Especially if you actually go into a holy place and then you go to take a bath in a holy river. Believe it or not, there's people who, even in Scotland, a friend of my wife, who takes a bath in a loch every day, even at this time of year. She's not a spring chick, she's over 60. Take a bath in a loch. Now, if you ever taken a bath in a loch, it's one of the coldest baths you'll ever have. When we were travelling doing Buddhist pushing, we used to take cold bucket bath every day. The water was cold, so it didn't matter whether it was summer or winter. It's the same thing. But even doing that, one day we decided, we were parked up, maybe in Loch Kilbride or something. We were parked up there. We decided to take a bath in the loch, and it was super cold, even colder than just having a cold bucket bath. So of course, this is a recommended thing that one should take a bath every day. Purifies us, because when we're sleeping, we're in the mode of ignorance, tamas gun, and then to get us out of that mode of ignorance, the first thing we want to do is take a bath, clean the body of all its tamas gun elements, and then, so that's for the body, but then we want to clean the mind, we want to purify the mind, purify the heart. So Cheto Darpanam Arjunam Bhavamaha Devagni Nirvatanam Shriyakairava Chandrika Vitaranam Devadijikam Ananda Buddhivardhanam Pratiptampuram Tatswadanam Sarvatma Snapanam Paramvijayati Shri Krishna Sankirtanam. So this is the first of 8 verses of the Shikshastakam, the last of 8 shikshas or instructions given by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is none other than Krishna. So although Lord Chaitanya was the greatest of scholars, he defeated all the great scholars in the day, such as Keshava Kashmiri, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, Prakashananda Saraswati. Still, like Prakashananda Saraswati, he was a spiritual master of tens of thousands of Mayavadi brahmacharis and sannyasis. Lord Chaitanya, he defeated his philosophy and he converted them all to Vaishnavas. Same with Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. Keshava Kashmiri, he was such a great pandit that wherever he went, then he was being hailed as being some superhuman pandit. And he was so intelligent that just spontaneously he composed 100 verses in glorification of the Ganges in Sanskrit. So what happens sometimes if we're not careful, then we can become proud of our knowledge. So he was becoming quite proud, or puffed up, as Prabhupada would call it, puffed up. My chest puffs up, I'm very proud. I'm such a great pandit, I know so many slokas. And I can instantaneously good slokas. There was a bit of bluffery there because he made some mistakes. And Lord Chaitanya caught him out. He's actually in the 57th sloka. Line 2, you said such and such, which is not consistent with this element of Vedic philosophy. And then he said on verse 86, this word's used incorrectly, it should have been this word. So, with the Supreme Lord, so Keshava Kashmiri was totally astounded, he was dumbfounded, he didn't know what to say. And therefore, rather than being a teacher, he was a cheater, which was just take that chip and tip and sort it around. So if we're not a teacher, we become a cheater. So this principle of teaching means that we have to be doing what we're saying. If we're not, then it won't carry the potency. So therefore, Prabhupada says that whatever we understand in Krishna consciousness, we just give that. Things which are beyond our understanding, we don't try to explain it to people if we don't already understand it ourselves. Whatever our understanding is, it's still very valid. Because even a little understanding about consciousness is very valuable. And as we can see, there's so many books, so many things to understand. So we can expect to understand everything before we actually start sharing our realizations. Even if our realization is simply that it's a good thing to be a vegetarian, then that could be passed on to someone else and stop them eating meat, stop some animals getting killed, which has a knock-on effect. So this Chetudapana Marjan verse we're quoting, the first verse of the Shikshastakam by Lord Chaitanya, saying that Cheto Darpana Marjanam. So our consciousness is like the mirror of the mind. So the mind is contaminated by contact with material energy through material desires, desire to lord over the material energy, exploit others, exploit the resources of material nature for our own enjoyment, and forget about who is the actual proprietor, who is the controller of all these things. Everything, like Prabhupada said, everything's here in this material world before we arrive, and it'll be here when we've gone. But in the middle we come along and fight over who it belongs to. This is mine. I'm Scottish, I'm Australian, I'm Indian. But what about previous lives? Maybe you're thinking, I'm a dog, I'm a cockatiel, I'm a geranium. And we were thinking that we're this body. We're thinking this body is ours as well, but we didn't create it. Even our parents didn't create it. They knew what they did to have to create it, but we don't know how it's created. But it's happening, it's been happening since before scientists invented themselves as being the authorities. So the Chetudapana Marjanam, so when we look in the mirror and we see if the mirror is dirty, it's all greasy, it's filthy, hasn't been cleaned for decades, then we don't see the true reflection of ourselves. By the process of chanting, this is the cleansing of the mirror of the heart, cleansing of the mirror of the mind, where we can start to see the real reflection. And as we clean the mirror more and more, then we can see clearly who we are. So this is the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra is simply for the purpose of purifying our mind so we can understand who we are. And in this way we become Atma Rama. Can anyone say what Atma Rama means? It's not satisfying. Which means we don't need anything. And therefore we can serve Krishna with detachment when we realize we don't need anything. When Prabhupada came to the West, he didn't have anything. Right? He didn't come with like thousands of dollars. He didn't come with Kata Madanga deities, a whole entourage of people with him. He came on his own. He had 60 rupees or something, which was like a fistful of dollars, as they say, and a bag of cereal, and he created some books. That's everything that he had, nothing more. But he had something much more than all these other facilities. We've got so many facilities nowadays. But Prabhupada had the deepest faith, which he knew, which he knew that by having faith in the instruction of the spiritual master, all success would come. If Krishna wanted it. So therefore he was saying, I'm here to do your bidding if you want to use me. I don't know what you want to do with me, but I'm here and make myself available to serve as your puppet, as your extended limb. Just like our hand, it doesn't do anything unless we tell it to. It's not you could go and punch somebody and then get taken to the judge. And then you say to the judge, it wasn't me, it was my hand. I never had any control over it, it just did it of its own accord. I think you would then get a psychological evaluation, wouldn't you? If you were really convinced it was your hand and you had no control over it. So just as our limbs do as we say, then we want to become extensions of Krishna, become Krishna's limbs, become Krishna's puppet. And this is something which we can try to put into practice every day to become connected with Krishna, just as our limbs are connected to our body. We want to be connected to Krishna. Yes, so just to continue with that verse, Bhava Maha Devagni Nirvapanam. So this Bhava Maha Devagni means this great forest fire of material desire. To It's like in a forest fire. We chant every morning, Samsara Dava, Nala Lida Loka. Can anyone tell me what that means? Shannon, did you know what that means? So this material existence is like a blazing forest fire. Nobody knows how a forest fire begins. Like sometimes you may get some crazy government leaders say this because they haven't swept the leaves up. Somebody said that, believe it or not. Somebody over the other side of the pond, I'm not mentioning any names. But there's many forests which don't get leaves. How are you going to sweep up the leaves of millions of acres of forests? Anyway, Prabhupada explains that sometimes the forest is very dry, and then maybe some wind, a little friction, some trees are rubbing together, the fire starts, and before you know it, all the animals are fleeing, and thousands of trees are burnt to the ground, etc. But no one can trace it. Where did it start? So similarly, this forest fire material existence is untraceable. We don't try to think, so at what point did I become contaminated and fall into the material world? What was my first desire? What was my first body? How did I come here, etc. Never mind that, just get out. Forest fire is dangerous. Just get out of the forest, or allow yourself to be extinguished by the merciful rainfall of the spiritual master's instructions. So, and carrying on with that analogy, that sometimes by human effort, forest fire is just not containable. It's just too powerful, and they just can do nothing but stand and watch. And they try so many things, like they try to see which way it's going to go, and then dig some trenches and cut down trees so it doesn't spread. But sometimes it just changes direction and goes another way. We have no control over a forest fire. It's just. But then, if the rain comes, then the forest fire's out. So similarly, we cannot trace, how we started to desire material life, how we came into this world. It's virtually untraceable. But we know that this insatiable material desires needs to stop for us to have any peace. And so the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra and following the instructions of the spiritual authorities to keep us in the right direction. This is how we extinguish this blazing fire of material existence. So this chanting is the life of all transcendental knowledge. This mantra is no small thing. It will help us realize everything which there is to realize. It's not that there is, we have to then become aware of everything. At one time, Prabhupada was asked this question, so you're a spiritual master, how many windows are there on the Empire State Building? Prabhupada said, that's not knowledge, that's just information. He says, what's the value of such? So he said, one has to know what is knowledge, what is worth knowing. So someone may know something about some little 8-winged insect who lives in the Amazon forest with 3 toes and 15 eyes or something like that, and maybe a person who spent 10, 20 years studying this insect, but what's the value of such information? So one has to know what is knowledge, and knowledge is pertaining to why we're in this material world, why we're forced to suffer when we're not to enjoy, and how can we benefit ourselves, what's the best benefit we can have. For example, in grade school we get a job. Sometimes you may get a job where you're an understudy or an apprentice or a shop hand or something, but you're always looking to see promotion. How can I get promotion, better boss, better conditions. So this is a natural thing. Living entities always look to improve themselves. So the best improvement we can make is where we are not dependent on anything material. We're simply depending on Krishna. Sometimes people say, oh, religion is just a crutch. But everyone's got a crutch. Better to have a crutch which is going to be there for you than a crutch which is really down. crutch such as Krishna, doesn't matter how many people try to kick it. Someone tries to kick a crutch away. Or, so say, for example, someone like smoking, and then all of a sudden, perhaps the government decide, okay, there's no smoking in public places any longer, then it creates frustration for a lot of people who smoke. Or if they decide, actually, we're not going to allow anyone to smoke at all anywhere, we're not going to supply it, then people start freaking out. They have no choice. Because, so there's many crutches, like, I'm not getting on anyone's case or judging anyone for what they're doing. We've all done these things. Some of us have done various things. Crutches in the material world. But our crutch of a devotee is Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And we take this lesson from Sri Prahlad Maharaj. Young boy, 5 years old, his demoniac father was trying to kill him in so many ways, but because he was a devotee and had full faith in Krishna, that if Krishna Mari Krishna Raki Krishna Mari if Krishna wants to Raki me, protect me, Mari Krishna Raki if Krishna wants to kill me, then who can decide otherwise? So it's up to Krishna. Just like someone made some threat to one devotee once, and the devotee just started laughing, and the person said, laughing and said, it's not up to that person whether he's going to do this or do that, it's up to Krishna. This person may think he's got a plan, but if Krishna doesn't want it to happen, it won't happen. If Krishna allows it to happen, it will happen. So of course we don't walk in the face of danger. It's not like, okay, let's go down to the motorway and we'll stand in front of the fast lane, we'll just chant Hare Krishna, Krishna. And there'll be a big pile up. We might not get harmed, but we'll cause so much havoc. And Krishna's not our servant, but we put ourselves in a dangerous position. Say, okay, Krishna, now I'm going to test you and see if you're going to protect me. It's not like that. Krishna's not our servant, we're Krishna's servant. But when we, in the course of serving Krishna, when we find that there's some danger, that we take shelter in Krishna. Actually, we take shelter in Krishna all the time. So when danger is there, it's no different. We still take shelter in Krishna. One time a talk show we did a skit, a little comic sketch, and it was showing devotees in the car. So we had like made a mock sketch of devotees in the car. There was 2 chairs there and 2 there, and the devotees were pretending they're driving on the way to Sankirtan, on the way to book distribution, and chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. And he goes into the skit, and everyone goes, and then they come back on the road, and they'll start chanting Hare Krishna again. So they was to illustrate that we don't forget Krishna when there's danger. We remember Krishna all the time, not just when there's danger. And we certainly don't forget him when there's danger. So in this way we always try to remember Krishna, and whatever we are doing, it should always be to further our devotional attitude and to remember Krishna favourably. So Kamsa, we read in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Prabhupada did a very nice summary study of the 10th canto called Krishna book, which we can read. And there Kamsa is always thinking of Krishna, but not favourably, because he sees Krishna as his enemy. He's always trying to think of ways to kill Krishna. So it's a meditation, but it's a meditation in which rasa. Ghastly rasa. Yeah. So his meditation is one of envy of Krishna or fear of Krishna. So therefore, Anyabilasi Tasunim Gyana Kamadina Vitam Anakurira Krishna Shalanam Bhagavatam, that we should, our activities should be there to cultivate favourable service to Krishna, favourable attitude, not begrudging. In the beginning we might not be the purest of attitudes, we might be, well, I don't really want to do this devotion service, but I can't deny it's the right thing to do, so better go on with it. Might be like that. From time to time we might be not the most enthusiastic, but we have to train our mind. The mind's only going to give us back what we put in. If we are negative with the mind all the time, it's not going to independently come back with something positive. So we have that freedom to cultivate that seed of devotion and service ourselves by our activities, and try to perform it favourably without any desire for any gain. It's not like, oh, we're going to St. Martin and therefore I should get a month off after. And then that becomes a fruital thing. What could have been a devotional activity becomes fruital. It's like, I'll do this, but I want this. Whereas pure devotional service is what we're aiming for. Why we sell ourselves short by saying we want something in exchange for it. It should be done to Krishna without any desire for any return. And when we have that consciousness, then the return is much greater than we can imagine. Take Prahlad Maharaj, for example. No matter what Hiranyakashipu tried to do, he couldn't kill Prahlad. He couldn't harm him, not the slightest. And at the same time, conversely, no matter what Kamsa tried to do to kill Krishna or protect himself, nothing could stop Krishna from coming for him. I was foretold by Kamsa that he would, the 8th son of Devaki would be the end of him. And then from that prophecy, he was always trying to find Krishna and kill Krishna. He couldn't do it. So therefore, the potency in Krishna's name protects us from the most dangerous type of fear. And that most dangerous type of fear is losing the human form of life. So of course, not only do we not want to just good timing. Not only do we not want to lose the human form of life, we don't want to come back again, even as a human again. We want to get out of this material world. This Maha Mantra is that which is going to relieve us from this material world. Anyone get any comments or questions? Yes. Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Eamon, for reminding us of Dr. Emoto. And he did some very interesting studies. Just to elaborate that, he started, before he passed away, he started doing some studies on food, and he got the same food cooked in the same batch, and he was speaking very negatively to one and very positively to the other one. And the other one, which had negative words, negative vibrations given to it, it started to go off quicker. Of course, I'm sure there's a limit to that. It's not that you would just keep on, you wouldn't need a fridge any longer. You just get some rotten apple and speak nicely to it for the next 10 years. But the whole kind of purpose of his, from what I remember anyway, the purpose of his experiments was to show the positive effect of people's intentions and their words, and how that, considering even their body is 75-80% water, so you imagine that even your body's getting purified by chanting. A very good question, because they're not ready for it yet. They're not ready, but we can see some things are improving. Like years ago, then we weren't getting much protection by the government or much support or any kind of clearance. Now, the things which we stand for are actually becoming more commonplace, and the government's encouraging people to have healthy diets and to take to yoga, meditation, things like that. 30 years ago, the government wouldn't have dreamed of saying that. They wouldn't have rushed neck to say such a thing. So step by step. So to begin with, small groups of people will accept these things, and then these are the people, and as more people, these are the people who will make a difference, and then as more people come to understand and accept these things, then there'll be a tipping point where some of these things, little by little, start to infiltrate into to the world and the general world. It wasn't done as a government thing. It was a friend of ours who did some national Reiki convention. She also arranged this, Dr. Emoto's convention. It wasn't set up by the government, so it was more of a kind of New Age therapy kind of category at that time. But he was using scientific means. It wasn't just some wishy-washy belief thing. It was science, hard science.
Two things like Shiva Mantra to get language out. How much is sort of just that Krishna sees your intention to do that and then facilitates, other than just to do with our actual execution of it in a good, in a proper way, or is it? Because the mind is very messed up from most people in Kali Yuga.
Yes, just to even execute our devotion service without rattling it down, that takes a bit of endeavour every day. Because the mind comes up with, oh, we can cut this corner, cut that corner. We can slur the mantra and say it, 3 times quicker. But if we just control the mind and try to do things properly, then that's there. The intention is there. Krishna sees the intention. If our intention is such that it's to do things nicely, then that reciprocation will be one thing. But if our intention is just to try to cut corners and do things sloppily, then that intention will also be seen. So Krishna encourages endeavour. He reciprocates with endeavour. So if our endeavour is such that we're trying sincerely to be a devotee, but we have so many hurdles, so many conditionings, etc., and it may be difficult for us. Krishna sees our intention. He's not saying, okay, you haven't chanted that properly, you mispronounced something, so I'm not going to give you any kind of reciprocation. It's not like that. He sees our intention. So it's just like someone who's a billionaire, they may come to the temple and they give £100 donation. And if you didn't know that person was a billionaire, you think, oh, there's a real nice donation of that person, that will help the temple. But Krishna knows, well, that's nothing, there's not even pocket change for that person. If someone else comes along and they've only got £108 in the bank, and give 100 to the temple, Krishna says, well, that person is making such endeavour. So it's not just the activity. So we're just talking money terms there. Any type of endeavour we make to serve Krishna, then it's sincerity. And it's not that we can do very little when we're capable of doing more, and see, but I'm doing it very sincerely. Krishna is not bluffed. He's in our heart. He sees what's going on. We're doing this sincerely, but we're doing so many other things which are not. So even if there was that example of the boy who came in last in the race, but he got the biggest cheer, because even every time he fell in the race and he got back up, and everyone was amazed that he got back up and he got back up and he got back up, and finally he finished the race, and he got the biggest cheer of all because he finished it. So that's Krishna. Krishna's waiting at the finish line for us. It doesn't matter what apparent mistakes we make. If we're sincerely trying to do our best ability, our ability may be compromised because of conditioning, karma, whatever, but we do the best with what we've got. And Prabhupada said that also. One devotee went and said, oh, Prabhupada, I used to take drugs so much, and now I just feel like my brain is wasted. And Prabhupada said, oh, just make the best use of a bad bargain. What is a bad bargain anyway? Even at best at times. So we do our best. And Krishna explains that in Bhagavad Gita, that he makes up for what we lack. So neither Prabhupada or Krishna gives us any reason to not go forward. Even one devotee said, oh, I don't know if I can become a devotee. I used to be a drug dealer. He says, I was also a drug dealer. Prabhupada was a chemist, a pharmacist. He said, but I have to go to prison because there's some pending court case. He said, oh, Krishna was born in the jail. So he wasn't taking anything as a disqualification. Of course, once we become a devotee, then it's not okay, that's going to carry on the drug dealing. It's not like that. once we become a devotee, then we leave that past behind. So as I say, every sinner has a future, every saint had a past, or vice versa, whichever way. So we don't allow our mind to tell us that we're disqualified. Lord Chaitanya came to save the most fallen first, and in this prayer, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Doya Koramori, it's mentioned that Narottam Das Thakur, so this one. He says, because I'm the most fallen, then my claim is first. So we never said, because I'm the most fallen, then your mercy doesn't extend to me. He didn't say that. So this is Lord Chaitanya. And this pastime of saving in Jagai and Madai, we're demonstrating that we're not even as bad as Jagai and Madai, so sorry, we're not so long. Iskon Guru Ki, Srila Prabhupada Ki, Srimad Bhagavatam Ki, Nitai Gaur Premanande.